Now, if you're like younger Jason, you'll believe doing good work goes like this. You get assigned a task, you keep your head down, you don't bother your supervisor at all, and by some miracle, you just wow them with the quality of the work you produced without asking any questions. I'm sorry to say, younger Jason, that's not what good work looks like. You've never been a trainee, right? The firm doesn't also think you're a trainee, so you can't use the knowledge you have right now to do trainee level work. You have to ask lots of questions to bridge the gap. Here's the problem with vacation schemes. If you have never worked in a corporate environment or just grown up with people to talk to you about what it's actually like, there's just so many hidden rules about what you're meant to do. And I wanted to record one video to watch before your vacation scheme that just tells you all the stuff that no one tells you. And so the goal is to help you convert your vacation scheme into a training contract. I'll talk about how do you prepare, what do you actually do on the scheme, and how do you nail the exit interview? How do you prepare for the vacation scheme? First, read about the practice area of the seat you're going to be sitting in. Now, when lawyers give you tasks on the vacation scheme, they're often going to forget how little you actually know as a vacation scheme student. And this is just because they're so used to talking about the work. They don't realize sometimes how much assumed knowledge goes into the tasks they give you. And that's why before your vacation scheme, I'd encourage you to read about the practice area that you'll be sitting in. And you can use Chamber Student and Forage. If you're lucky and you're at university, use Westlaw or LexisNexis. Obviously, if you don't have access to that, I'd just be creative with your Googling. So if I knew what seat I was going into, I'd look at, say, the Big Four, Bain, McKinsey reports on what trends are happening in the space. What have law firms written about this topic? And just like if I deep dive into that practice area into Google, can I find information about what the lawyers actually do? And as I read about the practice area, I try to think, what questions do I have that I would love to know in the vacation scheme from the firm's lawyers? Now, not all of you will know where you'll be sitting ahead of time. And so what I would do there is just read generally about the main practice areas. For example, if I go to a firm where most of their work is doing corporate M&A work, then yeah, I'd read about M&A. Practice your motivations. So imagine I've got like 2 weeks before I start my scheme. I would practice my reasons for wanting to join the firm, why I want to be a commercial lawyer, the firms I've applied to, and why I prefer this firm over those firms. And then when you start your scheme, just be aware you'll update your reasons later on. Review feedback that you've received. So many of you will get a session after your interview where you get feedback on what you did well and then where you could have improved. And I've had one Magic Circle firm in particular, they test candidates during the scheme on what they didn't do well during the interview. And so just go in thinking about, okay, maybe I struggled on, I don't know, commercial awareness or speaking succinctly, or my motivations didn't feel super tight. I'm going to practice that before the scheme. Make sure you understand the biggest stories that are happening in the commercial news right now. So one person I spoke to received feedback that the questions they asked with their supervisor during the vacation scheme kind of showed a lack of commercial awareness. And this comes because during your vacation scheme, you will have many conversations with your supervisors and the lawyers who give you work. And you will ask better questions and just be more informed in your discussions and your conversations if you understand what is going on in the news. So if I take like the current geopolitical situation, imagine like it's been a while since I did my interview, so I probably not stayed up to date with my commercial awareness. If I had a couple of weeks beforehand, I'd do a deep dive into, okay, what has actually happened that I've missed out on? How is that impacting companies? Like what's going on in the news about that? And then have law firms in their like thought leadership or their briefings, have they said anything about this topic? Practice your writing. Good business writing is direct, it's succinct, it's well structured, well proofed, and really deeply thinks about how easy is it for the person reading this to understand what I'm trying to say. And so to improve your writing, do forage tasks, and we have some free written exercises. Don't worry too much about the timed conditions. I know on my vacation scheme, I will be doing written tasks. And so beforehand, I'm going to make sure I practice. I know how to structure this well. I know how to write clearly, directly. I know how to proof this to a really high standard. Speak to future trainees who did the scheme. So graduate recruitment will sometimes give you a preparation call before the vacation scheme, and I'd pay particular attention to what you'll be assessed in. In the Slaughter and May vacation scheme, for example, the way you're assessed is largely based on your final interview. Not really so much the vacation scheme itself, But for most firms, you'll be assessed on a combination of the work you do, that final interview, and you'll also have extra assessed tasks, so like a group exercise or a written exercise. Now, most future trainees are happy to pay the advice forward. If you go on LinkedIn, you've seen someone's done the scheme recently, send them a short message, see if you can get on a call with them. Just be aware they've probably been bombarded with questions from other people, and so you want to make it as easy as possible for them to help you out. How do you do well on the vacation scheme? Most of doing good work is about asking the right questions. Let me give you a few examples of the tasks you'll actually do on a vacation scheme. So you'll do things like legal research, you'll do document or due diligence review, and sometimes you might do a bit of drafting. Now, I'll give you like examples of people I spoke to recently. They had tasks like, I need to review the duties of directors, or what are the post-completion mechanisms in an SPA. Now, if you're like younger Jason, you'll believe doing good work goes like this. You get assigned a task, you keep your head down, you don't bother your supervisor at all, and by some miracle, you just wow them with the quality of the work you produced without asking any questions. I'm sorry to say, younger Jason, that's not what good work looks like. You've never been a trainee, right? The firm doesn't also think you're a trainee, so you can't use the knowledge you have right now to do trainee level work. You have to ask lots of questions to bridge the gap. So good work starts even before you get your work. Andre, one of the people I spoke to for this video, had this great line, which is, when you get a piece of work, you want to leave with a clear sense of the outcome, the deadline, and how to get there. So you can ask questions like, when do you need this work back by? And then you can just work out, is that a hard deadline? What form do they want the work in? So is it an email, an attached document? Is it slides? Do you need to print something out? And is there a precedent, so like a past example of someone that's worked on this that you can use? And if you find the person giving you work is saying stuff that you don't understand, you have to be willing to seem a bit silly by asking clarifying questions, because you just couldn't possibly know some of this stuff. And the worst thing you can do is, say you get a piece of work, you go back to your desk and you realize, wait, I have no idea what I have to do, but you don't want to go back because you told them you understood. And this applies all the way through your task, right? So you want to be resourceful, look at the firm's precedents. Can I find an example of where this has been done before? Or what's the house style of the firm? Or often you'll be assigned a trainee buddy, and say you're working for an important partner, you could go to your trainee buddy first and be like, do you think I'm on the right track? Do you have any advice for this? This is a really good way to wow a partner with how accurate your work is, and it only came from your willingness to check in with people. And as you make more progress, it is perfectly okay to check in with the person who set you the work, and just be smart about this. So you don't want to go to a busy partner with the door closed and then knock on the door and be like, I'm stuck, can you help me? But what you could do is find out when they're free and say, like, I've made a start on this. I just want to confirm that I'm on the right track. Can I show you what I've done so far? That's perfectly fine and actually shows a really high level of competence. Finally, ask questions when you're not sure about something, but you think it could be risky to do it. So one example, a candidate I heard about, they didn't convert their scheme because they accessed the work email from home, and actually that was against the firm's IT policy. Think about the reader of your work. Good work comes from nailing the basics, and it's not by, okay, I'm going to impress them with unrelated information. So that means your work needs to be extremely well proofed. What I used to do is I would print out something I'd written and then just go through it line by line and mark it up and make sure there were just no typos. You should pay particular attention to the question or task that gave you, and your goal is to be like laser focused on delivering that. So once you finish your work, ask yourself, if they were to open this document for the first time, how clear is it? Does it answer the question? Is it well formatted? Do I need to cut stuff to make it better? Now, Arakwa, one of the people I spoke to for this video, she made a great point, which is that you don't need to know a lot, but you do need to make your supervisor's work easier. That's a good example of what a trainee does. Show genuine enthusiasm. So remember, the work you do on a vacation scheme is a representation of what's the work going to be like as a trainee. And if you don't seem like you care about the work, or you're not that interested, or you don't have questions about it, it's not the best sign for your supervisor that this is going to be the right place for you. So if you're invited to a meeting, for example, bring your notepad, offer to take notes. If you're actually interested in, okay, I don't have much context here, I want to ask questions, you could say to the partner, I know you're busy right now. Is there a time later in the week where I could just ask you some questions about the context of this deal? And when someone gives you work and you do have capacity, you should be excited to take it on. Now, there's a delicate balance here. What you don't want to do is kind of be forced and ask like uninformed questions for the sake of it. Sometimes what happens on a vacation scheme is people go in and they have these rehearsed questions. It's kind of unrelated to what's going on. And so this is why it's really helpful to think about, what am I interested in first? Coffee chats. There's a recent trend I've seen of people asking about this topic. Now, my view on this is that the most important thing is you do well in your own department and the work you're given. Put simply, you don't need to go on coffee chats to get a training contract. But if you're in conversation with someone in your department and you're having a good conversation and you're like, would you be free to go on a coffee sometime? That's perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is go in and be like, okay, I'm on my scheme, I need to do 10 coffee chats. And then you invite a bunch of people to coffee, but then it's obvious you don't really have a genuine reason. There's not much to talk about. That will be uncomfortable for you and uncomfortable for them as well. If you do want to reach out to people outside of your department where you're sitting, that's where the prep becomes helpful. If you see the vacation scheme as, what do I want to learn before I start? You might find, okay, I have this really big interest in something the firm does. Say, for example, like venture capital at Cooley. And then say you don't get that seat. It's perfectly fine to reach out to someone in venture capital at Cooley and be like, I didn't get to sit here, but I'm on this 2-week vacation scheme. I'm really interested in venture capital. Could we go for a coffee sometime? That's perfectly fine. Organization. One of the hardest parts of a vacation scheme is how you manage your time. So you could be given loads of work from different people. Then you have assessed tasks. You've got presentations and you've got socials. There was one firm I heard about that intentionally chooses a day to give you loads of tasks to see how you manage it. The solution is not to keep quiet or work crazy hours and kind of force bad work into tight deadlines or even miss deadlines. Go in just ahead of the vacation scheme thinking, there's probably going to be a day where I get way too much work and I need to think about how I'm going to handle it. So here's the steps I would take. Imagine like I've been given loads of different work and I've got a really busy day. I'd log all the tasks I had to do, whether that was in my calendar or notebook, and then I'd work out, okay, roughly how much is each of those tasks going to take? And I'd think about the importance of the task based on how senior is that person, how important does that work feel, and when is the deadline? That's when you speak to people. So you could go to your supervisor or trainee buddy and say, look, I made a plan for a variety of different tasks I have today. Would it be okay to run this plan by you and make sure I'm on the right track? Or you could ask, like, does it feel reasonable to spend this amount of time on this task? What this does is it's obviously like useful to get their advice, but it's also signaling your competence to the supervisor. And then if you need to move things around, it's okay to go to the people who set you work. Say you've decided, I think this probably seems less important. Maybe it was a work by a trainee gave you, seemed fairly relaxed. You could apologize and explain the situation and just see, like, is it possible to move this deadline? Most of the time they'll be like, yes, that's absolutely fine. But you can also make it clear, like, please let me know if not, and I'll make sure I get it done on time. So just know that you're not a failure. If you need to move stuff around, that's just good prioritization. Also carry a notepad everywhere. You just never know when you'll be walking around the office and someone will give you work and you'll just be so glad you had the chance to write it down. For me, after that, like, my handwriting's awful. So I'd go back to the office and type it up quickly. And then I could work out, okay, what did I understand? What did I not understand about this? Finally, I'd prepare a detailed daily log of what work you did, who you worked for, and what was the kind of context of the deal. And I would also write down reflections of what did I wish I did better in certain situations. That would be really helpful because in the exit interview, they'll probably ask you questions about the work that you did. Know when to relax. The pressure of how important this is to you, your desire to convert the vacation scheme, how hard you've worked, and probably feeling like this is my last shot is going to make you really stressed on your vacation scheme. And sometimes what happens is candidates kind of shoot themselves in the foot. Like they try to stand out too much by asking, say, like a forced question in a presentation, or say the supervisor tries to talk to them, but they're so focused on the work, they're almost like too hard to talk to. And this was something I struggled with. My main thing to say is it's really important to adjust to the person next to you or the people around you. Say you're in your office with your supervisor, they need to think, I want to imagine I'm sitting next to this person for 6 months. Could I imagine working alongside them? And that means sometimes like having a casual conversation about other things related to work. And this can also help you. I'll give you an example from someone I spoke to. There was a partner that came into the office after being away on holiday, and the candidate had a long chat with the partner. Now, this partner enjoyed the conversation so much, they became really invested in the final interview. They came in the office on the day to just give them tips, and then followed up to see how it went. And that shows just how important it is to build a relationship with someone so they are backing you behind it. Finally, this one's really important. Just be careful when you're around other vacation schemers. It's really important to stay professional. I can't tell you how many examples of people I've heard where it's the work social or just they have a better time to let their guard down a bit, and they say something in front of graduate recruitment, like complaining about the work or just something they shouldn't have said, and that can very often lead to you not converting the scheme. So really important, yes, like enjoy yourself, but remember, even the social parts, you have to be on guard and stay professional. The exit interview. So towards the end of your vacation scheme, you will have an interview, usually, where they test your motivations, they ask you commercial awareness, and it's really, really important to nail this. Remember, this is the last check the firm has, and so this is why they'll really push you on your motivations. And what you want to do is update your motivations based on what actually happened during the scheme. So I'd fully expect you to talk about how, okay, you maybe had some motivations going in, but the vacation scheme really cemented why, and explain why that's the case. You also want to think about, okay, what makes the firm different? Why is this different from other firms you've applied to? And that should show in the way you speak about the firm with excitement and energy. Just don't forget, you'll probably be super tired after those 2 or 3 weeks, but don't forget to have that energy in showing why you really want this. You should also be prepared to talk about the work you did, who you worked with, your reflections, maybe what other people would say about you, and what you wish you did better. Lastly, quite often I'm prepared to be pushed on your commercial awareness. That's why it's really important to brush this up before you even start. Thank you to Jessica, Andre, and Arakwa for sharing their advice for this video. We also now have a vacation scheme thread, which is designed for those of you with vacation schemes in spring or summer. You'll see people like Abby and Dylan giving their advice in this thread. Now, I've spoken to candidates this week who are honestly terrified about the conversion rate. They will say stuff like, okay, the firm only takes 3 out of 10 people, or they've been to a prep call and everyone seems super polished, or they went to Oxbridge. There's one thing I want to leave you with, which is don't over-index on the statistics. It doesn't show how many people didn't accept the offer, or how many people, despite seeming super polished, were kind of too complacent on a scheme. You being invited to the vacation scheme can 100% convert it into an offer. It's okay to be nervous, but if you're good, the firm will make space for you. And being good is not about polish or perfect work. It's about being coachable, genuinely asking questions, being reliable, and showing how much you want this.